Everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We probably will have more people jump on. I just sent out an email reminding everyone. So today we are going to be hearing from the wonderful Sabrina Vogler. This is part of the Rochester Regional Center for Autism Spectrum Disorders. We have a group of mindfulness programs. And as part of our mindfulness programs this year, we are hosting this webinar. We are so grateful to have Sabrina touching on this subject. She's such a wealth of knowledge for mindfulness and always leads such wonderful groups. So we're grateful to have her here this morning to share with all of you. I'll turn it over to her. And if you have questions for her, you can go ahead and use the chat. Although it looks like we're gonna have a small group this morning, so she might have other instructions and you may be able to just speak up as well. So we'll see what she has to say about that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jen. Yes, a warm welcome to all of you. I'm just, what a perfect way to spend a Saturday morning here in connection and the common humanity in the midst of all of this. So with no further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. We will get started. All right. So finding calm in an age of parenting anxiety. I don't know about you, but even just the title just kind of speaks to something, doesn't it? Yes, yes. Maybe I'll just start with a word about myself for those of you who are not familiar with me. I am a mindfulness coach in private practice in Rochester. And I am just every year, I am so moved and honored and thrilled to co-partner with the Regional Center for Autism Spectrum Disorders to offer support to parents in the realm of mindfulness, in the realm of stress, in the realm of how can we find within ourselves a place of calm, even in the context of this modern day world that we find ourselves living in. And just kind of from a personal perspective, I began doing this work in the mid-90s, and I'm just incredibly moved by the teachings of mindfulness. They have very much changed my experience, and then the teachings of self-compassion related to mindfulness. Once I became a parent of my twin boys, who are now 15, it was really the blend of self-compassion and mindfulness that changed the game for me and allowed me to show up as a parent in the way that I wanted to. So nothing means more to me than being able to share this with all of you. And I would just say that this is a time where comfort is paramount. So I hope that you all can do anything you can to kind of feather your nest right now. And again, as I said earlier, if you're able to turn on your video and I can see your faces, that is just such a gift that you share with me. And the pace of today, we'll learn some new things, and then we're going to really do a dive in and do a practice. So I welcome your questions. You really are welcome to just unmute yourself and ask when you have a question. So sound good? All right, so let's start with a pause. I'm just going to ring a bell. We'll take a deep breath. This gives us a little chance to land. And so we find ourselves here in this Saturday morning experience. Some of us may be coming up after a difficult night or a difficult morning, or a wonderful night or a wonderful morning. We have a range of experiences. So in this moment, we might consciously decide to take a step back from it all, to pause and to take a few deep breaths. deepening the breath. And as we do so, sinking down into the surface on which we sit, making contact with the ground beneath us that is supporting us now in this moment, landing here. Feels good, doesn't it? Just that little moment to kind of take a breather and to start again. I don't know if we have any Lord of the Rings fans here this morning. Sometimes story is the best way to tell the truth of our lives. And there's a scene in the first book / movie where a character is celebrating an unusually long life. And he's turning 111, and he comments to his nephew on this 111th birthday. He says, I feel thin, sort of stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread. I was so struck the first time that I read this line, and I thought to myself, if this doesn't sum up what it is to parent in an age of anxiety, I don't know what does. How many of us can relate to this idea of waking up, feeling that kind of heaviness, that scarcity sense that there's not enough of me to go around today, and then at the end of the day, completely exhausted, we go to bed with the same feeling. There wasn't enough of me. I'll never catch up. Like that feeling, of scarcity. It takes a toll, and it was difficult before we stepped into a world pandemic. The world has changed so much for us. If we were to devote this space to me asking you, what toll has it taken on your lives? We could talk for hours this morning about what has shifted and what that has meant for your children, and the way that our children are able to access schooling, and the way that we can access the resource thing that we need. So it takes a toll on our mood, takes a toll on our energy levels. It takes a toll on how we show up for our kids. This suddenly you're not just caregiver or parent. Now you're like 24/7 on-call tech support. You're needing to navigate Windows and figure out router issues, and everyone in your family is suddenly on Zoom, and there's not enough bandwidth to support that, or whatever all that it is. Suddenly you may find yourself trying to become a teacher and a special ed instructor, all kind of wrapped up into the parenting package. And this is kind of this overload of roles. This is how it begins to, this is the footprint that it leaves in our lives. So at the end of the day, it makes it hard to be sustainable, and yet it has to be sustainable. So we might start to feel like we're burning out. And there is a definition of burnout that I once heard that I've never forgotten. It was by a psychologist named Dr. Eric Gentry. And he defines burnout as what happens when the perceived demands being placed on us exceed the perceived resources that we have to deal with those demands. So for me, images can be very helpful in my learning. So I shared with you an image of a slider switch, like a dimmer light. And I like to just imagine in my mind, taking a step back and asking, where is the slider switch for the demands being placed on me right now? And where is the slider switch for the resources being placed on me right now? Now, I would like to ask a question of all of you. I'm going to kind of say the definition again, and you tell me what jumps out at you. The definition is when the perceived demands placed on us exceed the perceived resources. Anyone, please feel free to unmute yourself. Is there anything that strikes you about that definition?
I feel like a sense of panic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
it kind of. Oh, go
how
ahead.
am I going to manage all of this
Mhm.
at the same time and still do everything at a level that's expected?
Yeah, so kind of the panic that strikes you of how am I going to do all this, all of these demands, how am I going to carry them and still pull it off? Yeah, thank you. Anyone else, how does this definition strike you? The perceived demands exceed our perceived resources. What jumps out at you?
I think the word that jumps out at me is perceived,
Mhm.
because when I do pause and step back and reflect, are these demands true demands, or is it me saying I have to give more, I have to do more, I have to be the best all the time?
Mm. So kind of the distinction between, so this word perceived jumped out at you. Is this truly a demand, or is it more so how I'm interpreting it? Is it more so what I'm telling myself that it means?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The resources I have.
Mhm.
And I've been trying to focus on making sure that I have time to recharge. So I guess that stuck out at me because I've been in that mode right now, trying to make time for me.
Sure. So for you, it's a reminder of the importance of kind of turning up the slider switch on your resources, and perhaps maybe asking yourself, okay, what actions can I take today to beef up my resources?
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
Part
Thank
of why
you.
I'm here.
Awesome. Woohoo. We're all here to, it is definitely my intention that by the end of this day, number one, you're going to have a clearer sense of what it means, this thing of how we perceive. Number two, that you'll also have a more understanding of how your body reacts, how the story that your brain tells you when the demands seem very high, stress. And then number three, it is my intention that by the end of this day, you will walk away with a keen sense of, okay, I now understand my body's ability to self-repair and resource, as well as my own, and how to begin to make that choice. So thank you. So really it boils down to this: are we surviving or are we thriving? Because we all kind of have the same 24 hours in the day, right? This picture is so striking to me because if you think about it, out of all the places where this sunflower could grow, it picked like concrete. It didn't pick a nice, green pasture to grow in. It decided that the best conditions for growth were in the midst of this broken up, old, icky concrete. And to me, this speaks an image of resilience. There's a definition of resilience by Dr. Edith Grofberg, where she says, resilience is our ability to be transformed, even in the midst of or by adversity. When the adversity itself becomes the agent for your transformation, that's kind of this state of resilience, if you will. There's a quote by Albert Camus. Some of you may know it. And for those of us, well, I'm assuming we're all New Yorkers here, so we all know what it is to be in a winter. And for some of us, the winters are longer than others. In the midst of winter, I found that there was within me an invincible summer. This is Albert Camus. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. So how about that? That sounds appealing, doesn't it? So 2 questions that we're going to talk about today that matter a lot. It's framed by the context of in this moment. Question number 1 is, what am I experiencing? Question number 2 is, what do I need? Now, I would just like to point out the pronouns in this particular example of questions, and the pronouns, rather than he, she, or you, the pronoun is I. So in essence, this time here today is about how we can start to radically care for ourselves. And the science and the research and the studies behind mindfulness and self-compassion actually teach us that the more we train ourselves to pause and to ask these two questions, what are the demands that I'm perceiving? What are the resources? What am I experiencing? What do I need? The more that oxygen mask starts to go on, the more bandwidth that we have to provide to our children. So it's kind of paradoxical, though it may seem selfish or self-absorbed to take a moment and check in with ourselves and ask what we need and what we're experiencing. Ultimately, we can't help it. This is going to spill over into more generosity, more care, more ability to perceive what those around us, our partners, our children, are experiencing and what they need. So I don't know if anyone has recently had an opportunity to read the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And I bet the last thing that you thought you were going to have today was hearing about fairy tales. To me, I perceive that Goldilocksing is a verb, and Goldilocksing has become something essential that is a verb and a tool that I would like to share with all of you today. So let's take a moment to just kind of remember the story of Goldilocks. So Goldilocks comes upon this cottage. The cottage is not her own. Nevertheless, she makes the decision to go ahead and make it her own for the day. And while she's in there, she helps herself to a few different things. Does anyone remember, what does Goldilocks try out while she's in the cottage?
Bowl of porridge.
Yep, she tries out the porridge. What else does she try out? Does anyone remember?
The chair and the bed.
Yeah. So kind of there's three sizes of everything, being that there are three bears. So this provides an awesome opportunity for Goldilocks. And it's interesting, if you read the story, she doesn't just climb into the first bed and stop there. She doesn't try the first chair and convince herself that, no, this really is the right size for me. This really is the right level of softness for me. Maybe my back is killing me, and it's incredibly uncomfortable, but I have to accept it. You know, there's nothing I can do about it. Goldilocks doesn't do that, does she? Goldilocks pauses and says, it looks like there's other options out there, and I won't really know how they are unless I try them. So she makes this decision to sample everything in front of her until she finds that which suits her best. So let's go to this final part of the story where she's trying out the porridge. Does anyone remember the first bowl of porridge? When she tries it, she declares that this is too
Hot.
Hot.
And then the second bowl of porridge, she decides, is too
Cold.
Yep. The third bowl of porridge is
Just right.
That's right. So we're going to become keenly interested in how we perceive what is in front of us, while also becoming curious about what would a just right bowl of porridge mean to me in this moment. If I were to give myself permission to begin to explore this question, how might that change the stress reaction that I'm feeling right now? And how might it increase my perception of the slider of the resources that are available to me? So with no further ado, I would like to dive in, and I would like to do a little bit of an exploration of some very important pieces about how our brain works. And if we can understand these things, this is going to change the way that we view stress, and this is going to change the options that we have when we feel those demands. So check out this awesome photo that I found of this vintage TV set. People, this has the original wood grain on it. So for those of us who are old enough to remember, TVs didn't used to come with remote controls. There was an actual channel clicker. You had to get up and physically change the channel. Well, your brain is like a TV set that has two channels. So let me ask you, if you wanted to watch the cooking channel and you also wanted to watch a home and garden show. If you had one TV set, are you going to be able to watch both of those channels at the same time?
If you had
No.
picture in picture.
There you go. We have so much technology nowadays, right? Yeah.
Right.
So I'm guessing this television set we're looking at here is probably circa maybe 1970s. And I guarantee you, because I was alive back then watching television, that this TV set could only run one channel at a time. So this is going to kind of be our reference point for how your brain is. Bottom line is this: your brain has two channels. When one is on, the other is off. When one is off, the other is on. So this little cartoon displays to us the nature of the two channels. So I'm going to give you a moment to just take in this image. Okay, so here we are pondering the scene before us. We've got some trees growing, we've got some sun shining. So let me ask you, our friend the dog is pondering the same scene as us. What is going on in the dog's mind? And it's not a trick question. Anyone?
Thinking about what's in front of him right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much trees and sun.
Yep.
So we might say that the dog is in this moment deeply present to whatever is before the dog, right? Awesome. Okay, now we have the person walking the dog. And what, pray tell, is on the person's mind? Who is walking the dog? Anyone?
A person's subconscious is very full.
We've got, like, if you look closely at this diagram, we've got like a child with a frown. We've got a car with a bunch of kids. We've got like a door with mail coming in. We've got a couple mismatched socks. There's music notes playing, probably blasting. Yeah. So the person's mind is pretty full. And how many of you can relate to either of these thought balloons?
Definitely.
Yeah. So the reason why we can relate to these thought balloons is because these represent the two channels of your brain, my brain, and the human brain. So let's learn a little bit about those channels. So for starters, we get really curious about which channel tends to be on the most. So if you all were to guess, which channel do you think is on the most in your brain?
The first one.
The first one, and by the first one, you mean?
There's so much going on. I'm thinking about so many things at once.
Yeah. So this thought balloon that's kind of overstuffed with everything, that is exactly the default channel of your brain, to the point where neuroscientists have called it your default mode network. So let's talk a little bit about the specific features that we've learned about your default mode network. Are you ready? Here we go. Your default mode network means that you are time traveling. You're either revisiting what happened in the past, or you're anticipating in your mind what's going to happen in the future. Point number 2 of what's going on in the default channel of your brain. You're telling yourself a story. In fact, we spin so many stories. If we were to actually think about it, we could all be like Pulitzer Prize winning novelists by the end of our lives. Now, here's something interesting. The story that I'm telling myself, which is based on something that happened in the past or something that I'm anticipating in the future, that story rewards me. The story is how I'm trying to figure it out. If I can keep telling the story over and over, maybe I can get to the bottom of it, whatever it is. And the story, the more that it's run, starts to give us a little hit of dopamine, which is your body's way of rewarding you. So we get rewarded the more we tell the same story over and over. So here's an example of a story. The trigger is a cloud that is producing rain. So the mindful network of your brain says, yep, it's raining. The storytelling network of your brain, which is your default mode, says, I don't like rain. I wish it wasn't raining. My day would be better if it wasn't raining. My day is ruined. Every day is like this. It's always like this. Why does it always rain when all I want is for it to be sunny? Now, because my job is I get to listen to stories all day long and I get to help re-story them, I'm going to add to this, sensing what I've learned about the human brain based on my own brain and others. I would add to that story. And somehow the fact that it is raining means something about me personally. Like, why is it that I hate rain so much? Why can't I just be happy with rain? So there's a little bit of judging thrown in there, which is the third piece of what happens when you are in the default mode of your brain, is the brain judges by default. If you are considering the demands that are being placed on you, and you are feeling judgy about those demands, judging yourself for not being able to handle the demands, judging yourself for not knowing enough about resources, judging those around you for placing the demands on you in the first place, the reason why you are judging is because your brain defaults to judging. Lastly, in the default mode network of our brain, you grow your sense of self. So let's say I have an interaction with my child, and as I time travel to the past and I replay it in my mind, and as I judge myself, I start to decide that this defines me. It defines who I am as a person, who I am as a parent. Sound familiar, anyone? So it's almost like in the midst of these two channels, the default channel is very sticky. It just kind of, it's almost like a trance that we fall into. And we're going to go to the default channel every single time that we are stressed and every single time that we are at rest. That rhymes. When you're stressed and when you're at rest, your brain goes back to your default channel. Well, I have some good news. That's not the only channel in your brain. We have another channel. So the second channel, which is the mode that the dog was in, is one in which we're looking at the trees and the sun, and what are we seeing and what are we taking in and what are we thinking about? Well, quite frankly, trees and sun. So this second channel of your brain, which neuroscientists have named your direct experience network, allows us to be deeply present to our direct experience. And it's almost kind of like the lens that we look through as we're taking in this experience. We've had a chance to clean it off a bit. So the lens is very clear. I'm clearly noticing what I'm experiencing. And just like the dog who's taking in the trees and the sun in this moment, I'm starting to have this quality of perhaps appreciation, like how beautiful the green leaves are or how good the warm sun feels on my face. And there's not even a trace in this network of glue. There's not a trace of deciding who I am in a judgy way or coming to some rigid conclusion about what's going on. Rather, it's more so a matter of, I notice what's going on, and it's almost like I'm in the balcony. So let me ask you, back in the day when we actually could go to a performance and other people were in the auditorium with us, and we might choose to sit in the balcony. Let's say you come in late. Let's say you're watching like a choreographed dance on the stage. Anyone, what are the advantages of sitting in the balcony? Any ideas?
You really get a bird's eye view.
It gives you a bird's eye view. Sure. Yeah. Anyone else? What is it about the balcony that can be helpful?
I'm just thinking about what you said if somebody comes in late. If you're down, because I usually sit on the bottom level, if somebody comes in late, they're really going to get right in front of you and block you and distract you.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else about kind of the felt sense of being in the balcony? What if what's happening on the stage is really loud and really intense? What might the benefit be of sitting in the balcony in that moment?
It gives you some distance from the current stuff and you kind of away, but you still can see everything.
Mm-hmm. There you go. You can still see what's going on, but there's a little bit of distance between you and the lead character on the stage. So thank you to all of you. When we take a balcony seat, when we begin to play a balcony game, if you will, This is a new mindset. This is a new way of perceiving your life, as if you were both the lead character on the stage, living your life, and you were also an observer parked in the balcony. And the nature of the balcony is one in which you're asking these two questions. What is the lead character experiencing? And what might the lead character need? So in essence, there's these two qualities that balance us out. So this is almost like if you think about how a bird flies, it would be really hard for a bird to fly if the bird only had one wing, right? So the quality of mindfulness is one in which we have a clear lens that we look through. What is being experienced by the lead character in this moment? How is the lead character thinking and feeling and acting? And is there any stress that's showing up for the lead character on the stage? If so, the second wing, the response to the clear seeing, is one of compassion. So let me just ask all of you here in the room today, if I were to say, I don't know what compassion is, like, could you give me a working definition of it? What do you think compassion is?
Caring about others.
Caring about others. Sure. Any other ideas?
Putting yourself in the other person's place.
Being able to put yourself in the other person's place, we might call this perspective taking. Sure. And any other ideas about the meaning of compassion?
Giving yourself a break.
Giving yourself a break. Sure. It's interesting. If you look at the root of the word, it comes from the Latin compati, and compati means to suffer with. So as it turns out, compassion is actually a response to something that you might call distress or suffering. So compassion is how we respond to noticing that we are stressed out or noticing that other people are stressed in some way. It's a response that has that perspective taking piece, like I'm imagining what this is like for you. And then it takes it one step farther. And the one step farther is, and now this is what I would offer as a way of bringing relief, as a way of meeting whatever the unmet need is. So I'm just going to say that again. Compassion is about the perspective taking of what is the lead character feeling and experiencing right now? We might ask that of ourselves. And then the response of compassion says, then how can I start to meet whatever the unmet need is? So I want to pause for a moment and check in with you. Does anyone have any questions about these two modes of the brain?
Yes, I think I joined in late and I was like multitasking with my child. So I wasn't quite sure when you're talking about the default mode. So it's a default mode, like, so if you see the picture of a man and then a dog, and they see two things different. So it's a default mode is always on judging, sort of, and then do we call that subconscious or conscious mode? I think I wasn't quite clear about, those concepts. Yeah.
Great question. I'm so glad you asked. And just so all of you know, anytime you ask a clarifying question, you are officially practicing your newfound skill of Goldilocksing. Woohoo! So this is you kind of saying, can you help me clarify the temperature of this porridge so that it's just right? So yay. Okay. So the question is, let's just clarify again and sum up, what is the default mode? Is it conscious? Is it subconscious? Like, what is it? Okay. The default mode of your brain is the way of thinking that you're always going to be in when you're resting, when you're not trying to think of anything in particular. And it is definitely the mode of thinking that you're going to be in when you are overwhelmed, when you're stressed. So if we imagine that your brain has two channels, The default mode channel, which is one in which we spin stories, we travel back and forth in time, we're a bit judgy, we decide who we are. This default mode is where we spend the majority of our time until we recognize that we have a choice to change the channel and to step into the balcony and to start to notice what we're thinking and notice how we're feeling through more of a clear lens that's less judgy and more clear seeing, more curious, you might say. When we look at ourselves through that lens, rather than telling a story about what's going on that's judgy, we're simply noticing, what does this feel like? What is the character experiencing? The character being you. And oh, by the way, where is the point of stress and how might we start to resource whatever the character is going through? So if you will, the default mode is one in which it's fixed and we don't think we have a lot of options. The balcony mode of our brain, the mindful mode of our brain, which is one we can train ourselves to be in, is a place of profound resourcing because there's this open-mindedness, there's a curiosity as well as the ability to compassionately respond. Does that clarify it? Does that make it a little bit easier to understand?
Yes, but the other part, let me see what I wasn't. Sorry, I think I may come back to my questions a little because I think there's a lot of things going on, and then with what I've learned and what I know, and then what you're saying, and I think some are like how to say that. I find some ideas are similar, just confirm what I have know about mindfulness. But the other thing I felt, there's something new, doesn't agree with what I learned about mindfulness. So I think, yeah, I need to go back. I forgot the question right away. Sorry about that.
Sure. So you're integrating right now. You're synthesizing concepts that you've learned in the past. You're integrating new ideas into it. This is kind of how we grow. This is how we Goldilocks and find our way. So wonderful. Thank you.
I think I have the question back. Sorry.
Sure. Go ahead.
My question is that since you mentioned there's 2 channels and you show us the OTB.
Yes.
So then are you suggesting that our brain can be on the mode, and then we say most of the time we are on the default mode, but then now until we are being more aware of learn that we can actually using the balcony view or mode to see things differently. So when you actually will be able to do that, does that mean that our mind or our brain can still is only stick one mode, or it means that you actually have 2 channels on, but then you could like kind of easily how to say that, switch between each mode you want? Because in the past, because we don't know we have another mode we could access, so we were always on the default mode. And then once you learn to master, you can change, switch, between 2 channels, so you can do things easily. So means it's possibly we can turn the 2 channels on at the same time, or it still means that our brain can be on the same mode each time. I mean, I'm not sure I asked my question clearly, but I start to think about that.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. So the bottom line is these 2 modes of the brain are mutually exclusive. So our mindful mode or balcony mode or direct experience network only runs when the default mode is turned off. And the default mode only runs when the mindful mode is turned off. So this is where our power lies, is can we become aware that we are in the default mode? For instance, we might notice we're time traveling. We might notice the story that we're telling ourselves. We might notice that we're judging whatever we're experiencing. This allows us to see, oh, I'm in my default mode. I can change the channel into my balcony mode, into my mindful mode. So the 2 will always remain mutually exclusive. It's just that we get more skillful at recognizing that we're in the default mode and at switching out of that mode into a place where we're deeply present to the trees and the sun, like the dog was in that picture.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I have a question about that. I just think of myself I feel like I'm such a planner. Like I
Mhm.
feel like I'm often thinking ahead. So I guess knowing how to switch it is important. So it's not necessarily a bad thing sometimes. I guess it's
Mhm.
because I'm almost seeing like that's a bad thing. You shouldn't have all those things on your mind. You should be like this. So, but at times it can be very helpful, right? Because you sometimes need to plan ahead. So I guess you have to
Mhm.
switch back and forth or
It's a great question. And actually, let me go on to the next slide because I think this is going to answer our question. So let's talk for a minute. This is a side view of a person's brain, and they're kind of turned like this. The purple section is right here. So let me just, and I'm going to talk in very simplified terms right now. In essence, this is kind of how we take in our world. The first thing that happens when you take in whatever's in front of you, whether it's a question from your child or the sight of the rainy day, the first thing that happens is the trigger that you're taking in hits the lower part of your brain. The lower part of your brain is what we call the limbic part of your brain. This is going to generate an emotional reaction. And in particular, if you look at this kind of orange almond shaped object, you have two of these. They're kind of perked, one over the side of each ear. Your amygdala, we might call your amygdala your twin guard dogs. So emotionally, we have these twin guard dogs. Anything that you take in, whether it's a question from your child or the sight of the rain, anything you take in is going to be sniffed by your twin guard dogs. Your guard dogs will decide if this is a friend or a foe. If it's a friend, the signal continues to go up to this part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex. This is where we think, this is where we plan. This is called our executive functioning. This is a delicious, profoundly resourcing place in the brain. So your prefrontal cortex says, oh, this signal just came in, this question from my kid. First, I had an emotional reaction. My guard dog sniffed it out, and now I'm going to think about the question. I'm going to think about how I might thoughtfully respond to my child's question. However, the system starts to break down when the emotional reaction that we have to the signal is coupled by our guard dogs deciding that the signal is a foe. Your guard dogs start to bark, your amygdala starts to fire. In that moment, as any of you know who have more than one dog, two dogs barking at once can be really overwhelming and make it really hard to think straight. So in that moment, it's harder to access our ability to resource ourselves. You feel before you think. This is just how the brain works. So Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a neurobiologist and a child psychiatrist who has amazing books about parenting to share. If any of you are ever looking for a good parenting book, just Google Dan Siegel. I cannot tell you how many incredible books he has. The Power of Showing Up is his most recent book. And the Whole Brained Child book is just astonishing with all of the ways in which he teaches us about how the brain helps us to parent. So this is Dan Siegel. Dan Siegel says this: imagine that my hand is your brain, and it's my brain too. And the bottom of my hand is the emotion centers of my brain. And my fingers right here are my thinking centers of my brain. And they're connected. So to answer Dawn's question, you know, I might be planning for the future. And just because that's a moment of time travel doesn't mean that I can't time travel from the balcony. From the balcony, I'm looking through a clear lens. I can call on my ability to think and plan, and I can do this in a way that is life-giving and resourcing for me. Time travel in the default mode network happens from a judgy place. This is the time travel that tends to make us kind of miserable. We wish it could stop. There is no reason from the balcony mode of your brain that you can't start to leverage your ability to anticipate what your unmet need might be and resource it. So that was an awesome question. I'm so glad you asked it. So now here's the deal, getting back to the hand model. You're taking in your world, it's either a question from your child or the sight of a rain cloud. The question comes in or the sight of the rain cloud comes in. Let's say that you are just sick of rain. And everything in you is like, I would just be so happy if when I wake up tomorrow morning, the sun is shining. I need the sun to shine. I can feel the deficits of vitamin D going on. Like, please, please, please let there just be a sunny day. I bet there's going to be a sunny day when I wake up tomorrow. And you wake up and it's like thundering and raining out. In that moment, the signal comes in. You perceive the signal. You tell yourself a story about the signal, and your amygdala sniffs out the signal and decides this is not a friend, this is a foe. Your amygdala starts to fire. And in that moment, we literally flip our lids. Why? Because the emotional reaction that we have first is just so strong that we get a little bit emotionally hijacked. In this moment, because we are so emotionally triggered, the blood literally stops going to our thinking resources, to this part of our prefrontal cortex that could help us think our way out of it. So now we have flipped our lids, and it's all just one big emotional triggering. So mindfulness allows us to notice what are the clues that my lid is flipped. So let me just check in with each of you for a moment. Has anyone ever stopped to notice how your body feels when you're overwhelmed or when your lid is flipped? And if so, what specific sign have you noticed in your body?
Like tense.
Tension, yeah.
Sure, physical tension. Anything else?
Headaches.
Headaches, yeah. Anything else?
I hold my breath.
Sure. It's like, oh my gosh, when was the last time I took a deep breath, right? Our breath gets very shallow. Anything else?
This might sound strange, but in the past, I feel like sometimes I would start, I don't know, like sing. I don't know if that sounds weird. Like if I'm feeling stressed, sometimes if I don't know, just strange.
When you start to sing, does it help you?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know where it came from, or I don't know. It's interesting though.
Oh,
Well,
I know about that too, because what it does is when you sing, it takes you out of where you are and you can't subconsciously be where you were because you're so focused on the singing that it gives you a reprieve, I think.
There you go. So now what we're going to take is we're going to take what the two of you, what these insights are that are bubbling up, we're going to integrate them with this model that we just learned. Singing changes the channel on your TV. Singing deactivates the story or the time travel or the judging, and it shifts you into the direct experience of what it feels like to sing. It's a body-based experience to sing, and music is a direct experience that we take in the way the dog was taking the trees in the sun. So singing then would be your Goldilocksing way of helping you to resource when you notice that your lid is flipped. Woohoo! It's awesome. It's built in. Might as well celebrate it, right?
It took a while to figure that out though, and I don't sing at all. Like I'm not at all. So it's it was just interesting to me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when my boys were little, they used to do this thing. If any of you have multiples, babies do what's called a sympathy cry, where one starts to cry and the other is feeling chill, but then because the one is crying, the other picks up on that and joins in on the chorus. And I used to feel how fried I was in that moment, and I could feel my lid flipping. And so I would just start singing, like belting out anything I could, like, I don't know, show tunes or like, singing the alphabet. I'm sure if anyone was watching, they would have been like, what is up with this parenting moment? But yes, so thank you so much for that example. Okay, so this little cartoon is what the cells of your brain look like. The cells of your brain are called neurons, and they have these little spindle things and ways that they connect. So here's the deal. Anything that you do, anything at all, whether it's drive a car or make breakfast or remember your partner's name, anything that you do has a string of these neurons that are all connected together. And they are specifically devoted to that practice of helping you drive, helping you make breakfast, or helping you remember your partner's name. And when the brain gets stressed and when we flip our lids, the brain starts to memorize these habits of this trigger stressed me out. So this becomes a habit. And when the trigger of stress happens enough, the brain puts in some infrastructure, if you will. The brain starts to create all these connected neurons to support you to go into the habit of stress every time that same trigger happens. We can turn this around and we can start rebuilding the infrastructure in our brains so that it's less focused on the intense emotional reaction to the stress, and it's more focused on recovering from the flipped lid, asking, what am I experiencing and what do I need? Getting in the balcony and beginning to radically care for ourselves. So this creates a new set of neural networks in your brain. It's called neuroplasticity. I want to introduce you to this gentleman. He was the first to ever teach mindfulness in the 1970s. He brought mindfulness to a group of people who were in intense amounts of physical pain. After learning to practice being in the balcony while they were in pain, their pain got better between 40 and 60%. So this was kind of a jaw-dropping response that the world had to this study. The study has been replicated so many times since then. There are thousands of articles out there on Google and Google Scholar if you ever want to Google what mindfulness helps. But here's the deal. When the researchers checked in with these individuals and said, how in the world did your intractable, very severe pain get 60% better just by changing the channel of your brain? Do you know what the participants said? They said, I changed my relationship with the pain. I'm going to say it again, and I want to hear from you what jumps out at you. They said, I changed my relationship with the pain. Anyone, what jumps out at you in that sentence?
Change.
Change. Yeah.
Relationship and pain.
Relationship and pain. There you go. All three very significant words. So what does it mean to change our relationship with the demands that are being placed on us and to change our relationship with the resources that we do or do not tell ourselves a story that we may or may not have? This is the incredible power that mindfulness starts to give us. So in essence, what we perceive and how the world lands for us, it's all about this relationship. And it's all about taking a balcony seat, .s. I love it. Anyone who can find the little spelling error, that's the did you ever hear that teaching that where the mistake is, that's where the spirit enters? So there's my fun little bonus prize for the day. Anytime we can take a balcony seat and start to notice, how am I relating to this trigger, whatever this trigger is, this demand being placed on me? What do I believe about it? What is the story I'm telling myself? Can I change the channel? And can I take a step back? And can I start to ask and start with myself, what am I experiencing and what do I need? Dr. Viktor Frankl, who is an amazing individual, he was born and raised in Austria. He was a psychiatrist, he was a neurologist, and he ended up in a concentration camp with his family. He was the only one who survived Auschwitz. He wrote several books to tell about his experience. While he was in Auschwitz, he studied the nature of human resilience, and he was amazed by what he discovered. This is one of his most famous quotes. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So if we just break this down for a minute and put that through the lens of what we're learning, between what is triggering you, between how high that demand slider is, and how you start to resource yourself, there is a space. And the more that we can recognize when our lid is flipped and when we're stressed and when we're overwhelmed, the more we can compassionately respond. The more we can pause and take a step back and take a deep breath and say, in this moment, what am I experiencing? What do I need? And how can I go forward in a way that kind of Goldilocks is best for me, that allows me to show up for my kids in the way that they need me to show up? Oh, there's another fun little typo. So when we mind the gap, this is where our power to choose comes in, and that choice breeds our growth and our freedom. Okay, so we have just taken a deep dive in understanding how your TV has two channels, your brain has two modes. The minute that you realize that you were in the default mode of your brain, whether you're time traveling or telling a story or judging or deciding who you are in this minute, that's the minute that you start to change the channel by getting in the balcony and taking a deep breath and beginning to look through the lens of what is the lead character experiencing and what does the lead character need. So now we're going to get to the heart of, I promised you that I would give you these tools that you can start to practice on the spot. We're going to practice this together. And this is something that is a handout that was emailed to all of you this morning that I want to share with you so that you can access it whenever you make a transition, whenever you need it. If you're getting up in the morning, if you're going to bed at night, before you start dinner, before you help your child with their schooling for the day. Anytime you're stressed, you can practice this moment of calm. So the moment of calm itself is much quicker than the explanation for the moment of calm. So with that said, it's an acronym, okay? So I put together the moment of calm to kind of integrate the steps of what we know about how to best resource ourselves. Step number one is C of calm, which is we center. How are we going to center ourselves? Well, remember when I asked you, how does stress physically show up in your body? And you told me, well, I stop breathing, or I feel really tight or tense in my body. Well, there's a reason for that. So the breath turns out to be a really big deal and a really important way that our bodies know how to self-repair, and our bodies know how to bring that flipped lid back down again. And the more we can understand about how the breath works, the more we can start to leverage this and build space with the breath. So here we go, people. This diagram is what's called your autonomic nervous system. This is part of your body that regulates all your organs, okay? There are two branches. If you look at it, each one of your organs, a branch will do something different. For instance, your eyes. Your sympathetic branch kicks in when you are stressed. This makes your pupils dilate so you can see better when you're stressed. Your parasympathetic branch relaxes you. If you're relaxing and there's no need to run from your stressor, now your pupils are going to constrict. So there's this incredibly elegant way that your body responds when you're stressed versus when you're relaxing. Now, mnemonic devices sometimes help us remember these two branches. So here's the deal. Are you ready? Your sympathetic branch of your nervous system, think of symbols, sympathetic symbols. If someone were to clang their cymbals really loud at you, it's probably going to wake you up, right? That's what your sympathetic branch does for you. So if you're super tired and your child hasn't slept in days, and you really just need to be awake and you need to be on during a meeting, you need the help of your sympathetic nervous system in that moment to wake you up. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. Your parasympathetic branch, think of parasailing on the water, okay? So if you're parasailing along, it's probably going to be pretty relaxing. This person looks like they're having a chill experience, right? Your parasympathetic nervous system is designed to help you rest. It's what allows you to sleep at night and digest your food. Your parasympathetic nervous system, when it's active, makes you more immune to viruses around you. And it allows you to heal your wounds, to self-repair. Inflammation gets much better. So part of why mindfulness helps us with physical pain is that we get to train ourselves in shifting into our parasympathetic mode. Your parasympathetic mode is going to take down inflammation, okay? So these two branches, one revs you up and one slows you down. Your sympathetic is like clanging a cymbal, and your parasympathetic is slowing you down. Okay, so here's how we modulate that. If you're super tired, then breathe shallow, because you've already noticed that when we're stressed, we naturally breathe in a more shallow way. So if you're really, really exhausted, you can make your breath more shallow. And as it turns out, your inhale is tied to those cymbals, okay? So if you want to breathe in for like 7 or 8 and out for 2 or 3, this is going to wake up your body. Now, let's say you're stressed and what you really want is you want to parasail, you want to chill, you want to relax. Okay, so now we're going to deepen the breath. And now we're going to make your exhale longer. Your exhale is tied to parasailing, to your parasympathetic nervous system. So your inhale is tied to waking up and your exhale is tied to relaxing. So you can make the one or the other longer depending on your Goldilocksing moment of what you need. If you're stressed and you want to center yourself, then you would deepen the breath and make your exhale longer. Does anyone have any questions about the two nervous systems and the ways to change your breath to either wake up or slow down? Any questions about that?
Yes, could you kind of repeat the inhale part and exhale part to, I kind of missing that.
Sure, no problem. Your inhale is tied to the cymbals that clang together and wake you up, your sympathetic branch. So I'm going to breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to breathe out shorter. I'm going to breathe out for like 1, 2, 3. If you did that for 4 or 5 breaths, you're going to feel more awake. So breathe longer to wake up. Breathe in longer, to wake up. Your parasympathetic is tied to your exhale. So if you want to relax and you want to bring your flipped lid back down again, stretch out your exhale. So I might breathe in for 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to breathe out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe out. It's just how our body works.
So you talk about the inhale, so you breathe in longer to wake yourself up. And when do you do breathe out? Is that you want to yourself to calm?
Yeah, if you want to calm yourself, then you breathe out longer. And
Okay.
you also breathe more deeply.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about these two branches, about how we center ourselves?
Yeah, how do I trying to think here. I know how to do this. I want my son to do this and has autism, and I want to know how I can quickly get that executive functioning to go to a spot where he can breathe deep instead of hitting his aid or doing something like that. So how do I do that? Just keep practicing with him?
Honestly, well, how old is your son?
12.
Okay. Honestly, the best way to learn how to deeply breathe, deeply breathing is an incredible skill to teach our children. And the easiest way to teach deep breathing is, make it a game, make it fun. So if this were to be something that your son might be open to, children often enjoy if you have them lie on their backs and then have them, I don't know at the age of 12 if he would still have any kind of like a teddy bear or anything like that. But if he did, just experimenting with, or even saying, let's put your hand on your belly and feel what happens when you breathe in, when you're lying on your back, or what happens to your teddy bear when you breathe in, when you lie on your back. And what they will see is when you lie on your back, you can't help it. Your body naturally starts to breathe deeper. So if you lie on your back and you watch, almost like an elevator, that the teddy bear is going up and down, or your hand is going up and down, this is going to give our children a flavor for what it is to breathe deeply, and they can start to practice it.
Well, when he was younger, they did that, smell the flower, blow out the candle.
Awesome.
But I guess, so should I do breathing with him every day to help him get more centered? And
It's a great question. I would highly recommend it, because the thing is the more we practice breathing deeply, the more our body starts to make an association with feeling, with breathing deeply feels good. Breathing deeply relaxes me. The body almost starts to make like a muscle memory. So if we have practice every day, and again, I think doing things in the spirit of play and joy and ease are just really, really essential when we're teaching our children mindfulness, because it's easy to make mindfulness into a should, which is kind of, mindfulness is meant to be done with that, spirit of kindness and ease, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to offer it like a game that we could play, it will do so much good, to practice as often as is possible, really, because then when we're triggered, the body with just one deep breath then remembers what that feels like. We build more memory.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
On that same note, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
No,
I was wondering, when I'm with my students,
Mhm.
I'm not going to be able to let them lay down. So just quickly, do you have a recommendation that I could do where they're standing? I know I've heard of the blow the candle out too. I don't know if there's anything else, or just stick with that.
Well, honestly, one of the best ways when you're standing to take a deep breath is to do kind of what we call butterfly breath. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but it's almost like you're lifting your arms up when you breathe in. And then when it's time to breathe out, you slowly bring your arms down, and you imagine you have butterfly wings and you're just fluttering your little antenna all the way down. So this concept of when I breathe in, I'm going to lift my arms up all the way over my head. And then when I'm ready to breathe out, I'm going to slowly bring my arms back down again. This just deeply, deeply enhances the experience of what it is to breathe while standing up or sitting down. So a fun one to try.
Yeah, I was gonna actually, sorry, I have not slept for 2 nights in a row. My voice is just becoming, we had a death in the family, so I've been up all, my
so
brother-in-law
sorry.
passed away overseas, so I apologize for my voice being such a, so I wanted to add the same thing that with my son, the same thing that you just did. We had taught him for the last 24 years. We've been teaching him for children with disability. It's not an easy task just to teach them overnight anyways. So when they're in that mode of, when they're overwhelmed and upset, I guess just modeling it, even though you teach them so much, they're not going to grasp it. So I just wanted to bring that up, that you have to, during that time, do not talk to them, just do it yourself. And then they'll watch you and they'll model that, because they'll forget. It's not like us. We're going to be, when we are down, when we're upset, we're going to practice. But with children with disabilities, it's, even you teach them for 24 years that I'm doing now, when he's in that mode, I have to just stand back and just model it myself. And then he'll watch me, and then he'll do it, and he'll calm down. So it really works at that time.
And I so appreciate you sharing that. And you're reminding us that we don't have time to get into it today, but bottom line is this: when you start to regulate your own nervous system, which is what we're going to do at this moment of calm, it automatically, we now understand enough about what happens from person to person, that you calming and centering your own nervous system has an automatic contagious effect for those around you. So it actually shifts from a moment of I'm trying to regulate myself to I will naturally begin to co-regulate. Nervous systems like to partner up with each other. So if you are grounding and centering yourself in the breath, our children can't help as emotional sponges to kind of pick up on that. So I'm so glad you shared that. And that's just such a gift about what happens with us as parents. Speaking of grounding, another really important way that we are going to center ourselves with this tool is by noticing where your body makes contact with the physical world. So this is when we study trauma, the leading trauma expert right now in the world, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, recommends, if there is one tip he could share, he says, study where your sit bones meet your chair. Study where your feet meet the ground. And this, more than anything, is going to bring your stressed out nervous system back to center again. So we're going to include this into our moment of calm. The A is to ask. Now it's time for me to ask from the balcony, what is the lead character experiencing and what does the lead character need? And when I ask, what am I experiencing? I'm looking for either images or words to describe how I'm feeling. We have discovered, there was a 2016 research study that says the more clear we get describing what we feel, the more resilient we become in being able to match and meet whatever our unmet need is in that moment. It's called getting emotionally granulated. And when we start to check in with ourselves, we may even begin to view it like, I'm probably feeling more than one way, because this is just kind of how life goes. So there may be a part of me that is sad, and there may be a part of me that feels relieved. And starting to view it through that lens of there's a part of me that feels this, and there's a part of me that feels that, allows us to have the part of us in the balcony begin to care for these parts of ourselves. So I'm just going to say that again. When you check in and you ask, what am I experiencing and what do I need? You're probably going to come up with more than one emotion. This allows you to say, there's one part of me that feels this, there's another part of me that feels that, and there's another part of me now looking with clear seeing from the balcony so that I can compassionately respond. So once I've asked, what am I experiencing in this moment? What is it like for me? The L of calm is I'm going to listen with curiosity. Curiosity being, of course, the antidote for that natural judging reflex that I might have. Curiosity frees us from judging. And then the last step is M, which is make it easy. And when I make it easy, I may notice something about my physical comfort level. This is a Goldilocksing moment. Well, I may notice that I'm super, super thirsty because I haven't had a glass of water in like 3 hours. So the make it easy step may be something incredibly simple, like going to the sink and getting a glass of water. This simple way of caring for yourself, and listen, dear ones, I think I have a sense that the burdens that you carry are very, very heavy. So I know for a fact that for many of you, the simple act of stopping, going to the bathroom, getting a glass of water, putting on something comfortable to wear, asking what you need physically is like the last thing on your radar, right? So giving ourselves permission to do a simple thing, to stretch, to put a sweater on, whatever it is, your body is going to listen to what you are doing, and your body's going to say, oh, I don't feel so stressed because I can tell that someone is supporting me. This is going to shift you into a state of calm. So it may be physically caring for yourself, and more often than not, it's talking to ourselves in a way that addresses what we need. We've taken our emotional pulse and we want to talk to ourselves now in the same way that we would talk to a friend who feels like we do. Now, here's the deal. It is not normal to talk to yourself in a friendly way. When I suggest that you say to yourself what you would say to a friend, if you try this, you are going to wonder why Sabrina is asking you to put your left shoe on your right foot, okay? Our brain is naturally, by default, judgy. So this is going in the opposite direction of judging. It's going to feel really weird at first, but remember that thing we learned about how our brain likes to do things by habit over and over? This is going to be one of those practices where you try it and sometimes it lands well and sometimes it doesn't land at all for yourself. And if you keep trying it, if you keep practicing talking to yourself the way you would talk to a friend, sooner or later, your brain is going to accept that this is your new habit and you're going to start taking it in. And there's a lot of research about this. And if you want to learn more about this, I would highly recommend a book simply called Self-Compassion. It's written by a woman whose son is autistic, who did not learn to speak until he rode on their next door neighbor's horse. The author's name is Dr. Kristen Neff, and I trained under her. She's one of my teachers. She was the first person to research self-compassion. So the book is called Self-Compassion, awesome resource.
How do you spell her last name? Is it N-E-U-A?
It's a good question. So it's N as in Nancy, E, F as in Frank, F as in Frank. Kristen Neff
Thanks.
is her name. Yep, the book is Self-Compassion and her website is selfcompassion.org. All right, so I told you it would take much longer to explain it than to do it. So now we're going to take our moment of calm. We're going to center ourselves. We're going to ask, what am I experiencing right now? We're going to listen with curiosity. And the last step is to make it easy and to say, what would I say to a friend, and to practice saying that to ourselves. Everybody ready? Okay, here we go. We're going to start by diving into one of our senses. Diving into one of your senses automatically changes the channel of your brain into your mindful network. So we're going to listen until you no longer hear the sound of the bell. And now we are going to begin to make the choice to build a little bit of space here in between everything that's triggering us and how we respond to the world. And in that space, we start by centering ourselves, by giving ourselves the permission to take a few deepening breaths. Deepening the breath and stretching out your exhale, breathing out longer as a way of welcoming these sweeping sensations of relaxation in the breath to just move over any tight or tense places in the body, the scalp, the forehead, the cheeks, the face, the jaw. Breathing deeply and feeling the breath move over these places, the neck, the throat, the shoulders. Such heavy burdens we carry here. Breathing and allowing these places to be softened and cared for by our breath. The muscles of the back, the arms. Deepening the breath, feeling the breath with ease, moving in and out of the chest cavity, the solar plexus, the lower belly. The breath sweeps over us. We start to sink down into the chair on which we sit, noticing where the sit bones make contact with the chair. This is so stabilizing for the body. Breathing, allowing the breath to sweep through the legs and into the feet. Noticing where the feet connect to the floor. Taking a deep breath in. And then sending the exhale down the torso, down through the legs, through the feet into the ground. The breath keeps going down as if we were growing roots into the earth. And now from this grounded place, we check in with ourselves and we ask, what am I experiencing in this moment? What is it like for me? Are there words that describe how the parts of me might be feeling? And then we listen within our own interior silence to whatever answers may come up. We listen with curiosity. And now that we have heard how we are feeling, what we are experiencing, now is the make it easy step when we ask, what would I say to a friend who feels exactly like I do? And we simply speak that to ourselves, no matter how it lands. Trying that now. And beginning again now. Okay, I'd like to check in. Now we have a few moments left. We have about 6 minutes left. I'd like to hear from you. What did you notice as you moved through the steps of that practice? Anyone?
My feet were cold, so I got up and closed my window.
Awesome. Fantastic. So you noticed it and then you made it easier. Your nervous system will thank you for that. Anyone else? What did you notice as you moved through that practice?
I yawned a lot.
Oh, okay. Actually, yawning is a really powerful tool. If you're super stressed, yawn. It naturally shifts you into your parasailing mode. And let me ask you, the fact that you were yawning a lot, might that give you some information about how you're feeling?
Yeah.
Tired?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if you notice that you're just super tired, sometimes it's in that Goldilocksing moment, it's like, okay, is there like a 5-minute window where I might give myself a power nap today,
Mm-hmm.
Sure, wonderful, thank you. Anyone else, what did you notice as you went through the steps of that?
I felt really relaxed and I felt aware of my body when you said to breathe and feel it through your legs. Like, I don't think I take time for myself to do something like that. And I just became more relaxed and aware.
So thank you. You discovered that that place of body awareness was actually relaxing for you and to take time for yourself to notice the body while you're breathing. Wonderful. Thank you. Now I want to specifically ask about the last step, which again can be tricky if you're not used to it. What about this whole piece of what would I say to a friend? Did anyone experiment with saying something to yourself that you would say to a friend? And if so, might you be willing to share it with us?
I can't remember exactly what the thought was, but I felt like a negative thing coming about someone in my family. And like I just said to myself, think of them as a friend. How would you say it? Like I found myself thinking that, but I didn't know what I would say though. I just kind of caught myself.
So it's more like you caught your natural tendency to judge because you have a brain. And then there was a bit of a reframe there. Yes. Steve, were you about to say something? Hi, Steve.
Hi, actually, it's his wife, Sandra.
Oh,
we have hi. Sorry, we have the same.
Sure.
With internet, I apologize.
No problem.
I felt first strange, and then I felt like, oh, this is cool. So that's the best way to explain it. I don't know, if I do this to myself more often, life will be better.
Yay, awesome. So you stepped out of your comfort zone and you were surprised. It went okay.
Okay, but I'm like, okay, this is great. I'll just need to give myself a pep talk now and then, and I'll be better.
There you go. And can I just say that courageous moment, right, of stepping out of your comfort zone and trying it, your body's eavesdropping on the way that you talk to yourself. So when you talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend, it's going to shift your body out of being stressed out into being calm and feeling connected with the world. So, hey, who wouldn't want that, right? Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I actually, when we started doing that, I mean, because I can hear the voice downstairs. I'm upstairs on the second floor. So I could hear my son was talking to the teacher. And then, I start to hear the heater, is on. So I start to hear those pipes running sounds going on. And I notice it things around me. But then as I hear the instruction from you, I start to do that and I feel relaxed. And then I think maybe at the end you said that, how would you talk, like, talk to a friend like that? So I think I hear that cueing. So then, I kind of like imagine, okay, I'm talking to a friend, say, this is something you feel really good. You should continue doing that. And then, good job doing that. Yeah, I think that's what I did.
All right,
I
wonderful.
like that.
So yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So you kind of, it felt like, yeah, this is the right bowl of porridge for me, if you will. You appreciated it, you opened to it, and it felt good.
Thank you.
Awesome, wonderful.
I
Thank
really enjoyed
you.
this.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, I think we have 1 minute left. I'm just incredibly grateful that all of you got up to spend this time here with me. And so, like I said, the tool that we went through, the moment of calm, is emailed and in your inbox. If anyone ever needs to contact me, my website is on the letterhead of the tool. It's just heartinthemoment.com. It's super easy to send me a note through my website. I have recorded meditations on my website that are free MP3s. That's on the resources page. But I would just say, thanks so much for this time. I hope that this is something that you can bring with you, and be well.
Excuse me, could you say that again about your website and information for?
Sure. Yeah. So my website is heartinthemoment.com. Heart in the moment. And
Heart.
Yes, if you look on your email, when you get the calm, the moment of calm tool, the letterhead on has my website on the bottom of the letterhead. So yeah. And there's free MP3s that you can listen to on the website.
Thank you.
And Jen just put a link in the chat box.
I appreciate that.
Jen. And the doctor's name for trauma, I'm going to answer that question, is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, K-O-L-K. Bessel van der Kolk, K-O-L-K.
I wonder that, could we find information from your website? Do you usually offer like workshops to adults, or you also offer to like children? Because I think I can practice, but I think it's usually my son needs that too. As I think one of friends just mentioned that there's some experience those, emotion ups and downs. And then, I do see that from my boy, and I think he really needs that to calm that down, that space between things happen and then how you react. And sometimes it's just like flip and fry situation. We always have some situations comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm going to let Jen speak for a moment, because the regional center has so many resources for your children. Jen, are you able to comment?
Hi, Michelle. We don't have anything right now that I can think of. Well, let me send you an email. Can you message me privately in the chat with your email address, and I'll email you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
Thanks everyone. You too.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Good day.
This
Thank
Bye.
you,
was great.
everyone.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.